It was my 68th birthday, the day my son Daniel called me a useless old woman and kicked me out of my home a mere hour after my husband's will was read. I simply drove away, suitcase in hand, toward a dilapidated garage my husband mysteriously left me. What awaited me inside wasn't junk, but a secret that changed everything. If you've ever been underestimated, you need to hear this. Like, share, and tell me where you're watching from. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp concrete and old oil, a stark contrast to the sterile elegance of the penthouse I'd left just hours before. Here, in this abandoned garage, on my 68th birthday, I fumbled with a rusted key. Each turn of the cold metal in the lock felt like a twist in my gut, mirroring the sharp ache in my heart. Tears, hot and unbidden, blurred my vision, not just from the biting wind seeping through the gaps in the corrugated iron, but from the echo of Daniel's cruel words. "You're just a useless old woman, Mom," he'd sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. It all started just this morning, a day meant to be a quiet remembrance of Arthur, my late husband, but instead became a shattering spectacle. Mr. Sterling, Arthur's longtime lawyer, a man usually as composed as the polished mahogany of his office desk, seemed unusually uneasy. His spectacles kept sliding down his nose as he cleared his throat, adjusting the thick vellum pages of Arthur's last will and testament. Daniel, my son, sat opposite me, feigning an air of solemn grief that I knew deep down was already cracking. When Mr. Sterling began to read, the words sliced through the hushed room like a razor. Daniel, Arthur's only son, was bequeathed a sprawling penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline, along with the bulk of Arthur's main investments and considerable estate. It was expected, of course. Daniel had always been Arthur's pride, his successor. But then came the part about me, Eleanor Vance. My name was mentioned, not with a loving bequest, but with a curt, almost dismissive line. I was left the garage and its contents located at a rather nondescript address, 1420 Industrial Parkway. A beat of silence followed, thick with unspoken questions. Daniel's face, which had maintained a veneer of sorrow, now visibly shifted. The lines of grief softened, replaced by a slow, almost imperceptible triumph. He caught my eye, a glint of something cold and victorious in his gaze. "Don't worry, Mom," he said, his voice saccharine, a stark contrast to the lawyer's strained politeness. "I'll make sure you're taken care of." The words were meant to sound reassuring, but they felt like a veiled threat, a cage door clanging shut. That evening, the facade completely crumbled. I was still reeling from the will reading, trying to process the bewildering turn of events, when Daniel found me in the living room of what used to be our penthouse. "Mom," he began, without preamble, "I need you to move out. Tonight." My breath hitched. "It's mine now. I'm having colleagues over and I need the space." His tone was dismissive, his eyes already scanning the room, mentally redecorating, erasing my presence. He offered suggestions, not out of kindness, but out of a desire to quickly dispose of me. "You could stay with Aunt Martha," he proposed, naming my distant, often unwell sister. Or, "There's always that garage Dad left you." He then let out a short, cruel laugh, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Why he left you that dump is beyond me. What are you going to do with it? Open a mechanic shop at your age?" The question hung in the air, barbed and demeaning, a final insult to cement my perceived uselessness. I was stunned, utterly speechless. The audacity, the callousness, the complete lack of respect for his father's memory, let alone his own mother. My world, which had already been shaken by Arthur's sudden passing, now felt like it was crumbling into dust. I simply nodded, the fight gone from me, for now. With numb fingers, I retrieved my old, worn suitcase from the back of the closet, packed a few essentials, and clutched the rusted key, my only inheritance, in my hand. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city lights blurring into streaky lines of sorrow and anger. Eventually, the address 1420 Industrial Parkway appeared on my GPS. It led me to the outskirts of town, to a forgotten stretch of industrial wasteland. The building was old, derelict, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin. The roof sagged in places, and weeds grew tall and defiant around the entrance. A metal sign, barely legible, read Arthur Vance Holdings Storage Facility. My heart sank further. A storage unit? Was this Arthur's final cruel joke, or Daniel's interpretation of it? With a deep, shaky breath, I pushed open the creaking, groaning metal door. It protested loudly, echoing in the cavernous darkness. The smell was stronger here, old oil, dust, and something else. Something metallic and strangely familiar. I switched on the weak beam of my phone's flashlight, sweeping it across the gloom. My breath hitched. This was no ordinary storage unit filled with dusty boxes and forgotten furniture. Under heavy, custom-fitted tarpaulin covers, three distinct shapes loomed. My hand trembled as I approached the nearest one. The fabric was thick, industrial grade, designed to protect. As I reached out and gently lifted a corner, the beam of my flashlight caught something beneath. A glint of polished chrome, a sleek curve of metal. It wasn't junk. It was an unmistakable, gleaming silver Aston Martin's grille, polished to a mirror finish, despite the surrounding dust. My mind raced. What was this? Why had Arthur kept it secret, not just from Daniel, but from me? Oh, my hands trembled as I reached for the heavy tarpaulin, the memory of Daniel's cruel laughter still ringing in my ears. With a surge of adrenaline, I pulled the cover back. The dim beam of my phone flashlight danced across a masterpiece. A 1964 Aston Martin DB5, pristine silver birch, gleamed under the grime of the dilapidated garage. Its curves were iconic, its presence breathtaking. It wasn't just a car, it was a legend, polished to an impossible sheen, as if it had just rolled off the assembly line. My breath hitched. This was Arthur's car, a vehicle I'd only ever seen in magazines, never in his actual garage at home. Driven by a burgeoning sense of disbelief and a desperate need for answers, I moved to the next form. Again, the cover came away, revealing a 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing. Deep blue, its immaculate paintwork seemed to absorb the meager light. The distinctive upward swinging doors, like elegant wings, spoke of revolutionary engineering and timeless design. This was another legend, another fortune, sitting silently in what I'd been told was a worthless dump. My mind reeled. These weren't just old cars. They were museum-quality treasures, each worth more than my entire life savings combined. Finally, the third cover. This one revealed a 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4, its rich red body a defiant splash of color against the gloom. Aggressive, beautiful, and utterly perfect. Three automotive titans, each one a testament to luxury, speed, and meticulous preservation. It felt like I'd stumbled into a secret vault, not an abandoned storage facility. Beside each vehicle, tucked carefully into the crease of the tarpaulin, lay a slim, handcrafted leather portfolio. Inside, I found not only the original purchase receipts and detailed service records, but also authenticated provenance documents, historical context, and recent appraisal certificates. These weren't just cars, they were investments, painstakingly cared for, documented down to the last nut and bolt. These were museum-quality treasures, I whispered to the empty space, the words echoing the realization slowly dawning on me. There's got to be an explanation for all of this. An explanation for why Arthur kept them secret. My eyes scanned the walls, searching, hoping for a clue, for something, anything to make sense of this fantastical discovery. That's when I saw it, a manila envelope taped neatly to a pristine section of wall, oddly clean compared to its surroundings. Arthur's distinctive, elegant handwriting was scrawled across it. Eleanor. A jolt went through me, a mixture of profound relief and an unsettling dread. As I reached for the envelope, my hand brushed against a small, industrial-style switch hidden discreetly behind it. I flicked it. The garage was instantly bathed in a brilliant, crisp light as modern LED fixtures hummed to life, revealing what my weak flashlight had only hinted at. This wasn't a dilapidated garage. It was a climate-controlled, state-of-the-art automotive sanctuary. The floor was polished concrete, spotless, save for a fine layer of dust disturbed by my entry. Temperature gauges on the wall indicated precise humidity and climate control. It was a secret world, meticulously crafted, hidden behind a crumbling facade. I sank onto a nearby leather bench, surprisingly comfortable and obviously chosen with care. My fingers fumbled with the envelope, the paper cool against my skin. I pulled out a single sheet, folded crisply. Arthur's familiar scent, faint but unmistakable, clinging to the paper. My dearest Eleanor, the letter began, his voice suddenly so clear in my mind. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've discovered what I've come to think of as my final gift to you. My vision blurred again, but this time not from sorrow alone, but from a profound, bewildering love. Arthur went on to explain, 6 years ago, he'd received a devastating diagnosis, advanced heart failure. He'd kept it secret, even from me, to spare me the worry, and to buy himself time to plan. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you vulnerable, he wrote, especially after watching our son change these past few years. Something in Daniel hardened, became more calculating, less like the boy we raised. My heart ached, confirming my own uneasy observations about Daniel. Arthur knew. He had seen it too. I knew if I left you direct assets in the traditional way, the letter continued, someone like Jonathan would have found ways to control them, to manage your portion for their benefit, leaving you little power or true freedom. The mention of Jonathan was a chilling revelation, a name I didn't recognize, yet Arthur spoke of him as a known threat. Was he an associate? A rival? A shadow that lurked in the periphery of Arthur's complex business world? Arthur, it seemed, had foreseen every potential betrayal. He then detailed the value of my inheritance. These vehicles, carefully acquired and maintained, represent a substantial investment. Their current estimated market value, he wrote, the numbers hitting me like a physical blow, is approximately $12 million. $12 million. The phrase spun in my head, a dizzying counterpoint to Daniel's useless old woman. The letter ended with a new instruction, a continuation of Arthur's intricate scavenger hunt. Behind the photo of us from our honeymoon, the one above my desk in the penthouse study, you'll find a small safe. The combination is your birthday. My birthday. Today. The day Daniel had kicked me out. The irony was a bitter pill, yet Arthur's foresight was a balm. But what else could possibly be in that safe? The instruction from Arthur's letter sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through me. My birthday, today, was the combination for the safe, the very day Daniel had deemed me useless. My mind raced, picturing the penthouse study, the familiar scent of old books in Arthur's pipe tobacco. The photo of us, framed in silver, sat proudly on his mahogany desk. It wasn't a honeymoon photo, as the letter initially suggested, but a more recent one, our 35th anniversary, taken on the Rialto Bridge in Venice, Arthur's arm around me, both of us beaming. His smile in the photo now felt like a silent promise. Leaving the pristine sanctuary of the garage, I drove back toward the city, a quiet determination hardening my resolve. The penthouse, no longer a home but a tactical objective, loomed. Daniel wouldn't be back for hours, engrossed in his colleague gathering. I let myself in with the old key I still possessed, the one Daniel had forgotten to confiscate. The apartment felt colder, emptier, already imbued with his new calculating presence. The study was exactly as I remembered it. Bookshelves overflowing, maps on the wall, and there on the desk, our photo. My fingers traced Arthur's smiling face before I carefully lifted the frame. Behind it, as promised, a small, discreet wall safe was revealed. My heart pounded. I input the combination. Our anniversary date, not my birthday. Arthur, ever the romantic, ever the clever strategist. The safe clicked open with a soft, satisfying thud. Inside, nestled amongst layers of velvet, was a thick leather-bound portfolio and several sleek USB drives. The top document, crisply printed, read, Estate of Arthur Vance, complete asset inventory for Eleanor Vance. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. I found a comfortable armchair, one Arthur and I had often shared, and began to read. What unfolded before my eyes was an empire. Columns of meticulously itemized assets stretched across dozens of pages, apartment buildings in prime locations, commercial properties generating steady income, a sprawling vineyard in Napa Valley, diversified stock portfolios, even a collection of antique maps and rare books. The total value, written in bold at the bottom of the last page, made my ears ring. It wasn't just millions, it was hundreds of millions. A fortune so vast it defied comprehension. My entire life with Arthur, I'd known we were comfortable, even wealthy. But this was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. He had built a secret kingdom, all for me. I returned to Arthur's letter, my eyes scanning the next paragraph, desperate for an explanation. This entire endeavor, he wrote, this parallel estate, was just a project to channel my anxiety after my diagnosis, a way to focus my mind when faced with my own mortality. But as I built it, I realized something profound. Revealing this prematurely or leaving it in a conventional will might put it at risk, especially if Daniel discovered the true extent of these holdings before he truly understood the value of love and family. A fresh wave of understanding washed over me. Arthur hadn't been cruel in leaving Daniel the penthouse. He had been performing a test, a final desperate gamble on his son's character. I wanted to give Daniel a chance to show his true character, the letter continued, to see if the boy we raised, the kind, generous spirit, would emerge even after my passing. If he's proven himself worthy, perhaps you might choose to share your good fortune. But if he has revealed a different nature, one fueled by greed or disregard, well then, my dearest Eleanor, this legacy is not just your comfort, it is your protection, your independence, your freedom. I clutched the letter to my chest, hot tears streaming down my face. Arthur, my steady, thoughtful Arthur, had foreseen it all. His love wasn't just a sentiment, it was a fortress, meticulously built brick by brick to shield me from a world he knew could be unkind, especially when money was involved. The foresight, the dedication, the sheer depth of his love was almost unbearable in its intensity. He hadn't just prepared for his death, he had prepared for my life after his death with such unwavering care. Leaving the penthouse with the portfolio and USB drive securely in my bag, I felt a new sense of purpose. Back at the garage, the brilliant LED lights now seemed less like a revelation and more like an invitation. I noticed a small, unmarked door at the back of the main bay. Curiosity piqued, I pushed it open. It led to a surprisingly spacious adjoining office, neatly furnished with a desk, a comfortable chair, and shelves lined with new, untouched office supplies. Beyond that, a pristine modern bathroom, fully stocked with toiletries, and a small mini fridge humming softly. Tucked away in a built-in wardrobe were even a few changes of clothes, neatly folded. My practical husband, I murmured, a soft laugh escaping my lips through my tears. He anticipated I might need temporary shelter here, away from everything. Arthur hadn't just left me cars and an empire. He had left me a sanctuary, a fully equipped safe haven, a testament to a love that transcended even death itself. The first light of dawn filtered through the grimy windows of the main garage bay, illuminating the cavernous space. What looked like cracked and peeling paint from the outside was, in reality, a meticulously applied distressed finish. The exterior was a masterpiece of intentional camouflage designed to appear abandoned, dilapidated, and utterly worthless to any casual observer. Arthur, my brilliant, secretive husband, had truly thought of everything. He had created a perfect illusion. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my awestruck contemplation of the vehicles. It was a contact saved simply as Charles Blackwood, dealer, in Arthur's carefully curated phone. Taking a deep breath, I called the number. Mrs. Vance, a smooth professional voice answered almost immediately. I've been expecting your call. Charles Blackwood arrived within the hour, a dapper man in a tweed jacket, carrying a slim briefcase. He walked through the garage, his eyes sweeping over the Aston Martin, the Mercedes, and the Ferrari with a reverence that mirrored my own. Mr. Vance began these acquisitions about 6 years ago, he explained, his voice hushed. He was meticulous, precise. He researched each vehicle personally, often for months, before giving me the go-ahead. He wanted only the finest examples. Charles turned to me, a knowing look in his eyes. He told me once that Myers, true classics like these were tangible, beautiful assets. Something you could see and touch, not just numbers on a statement. He said they had soul. A tightening in my throat prevented me from speaking. Arthur's thoughtfulness, his desire to give me something concrete, something beautiful, hit me anew. He hadn't just secured my future. He had done it with grace and an understanding of what I might need for comfort. The valuations I provided in the portfolio are current and accurate, Charles continued, confirming the staggering $12 million figure. These vehicles are exceptionally rare and perfectly preserved. As for your options, Mrs. Vance, you have many. You can sell them, of course. We could facilitate that process discreetly and ensure you receive top market value. Or you could maintain them here, or even, he gestured to the Aston Martin with a slight smile, drive them. They're all in perfect running order. The thought of cruising down the highway in an Aston Martin, wind in my hair, was almost enough to make me laugh. Almost. I spent the rest of the morning poring over the vast portfolio Arthur had left me. Among the hundreds of millions in assets, tucked away near the very end, was a simple, unassuming deed. It wasn't for a mansion or an estate, but a modest, charming cottage in Carmel by the sea. 2 bedrooms, a small garden, overlooking the ocean. It was an idyll, a peaceful retreat, the kind of place Arthur and I had always dreamed of for our retirement. I had a home, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. A real home. All this time. Just as I was beginning to feel a fragile sense of peace, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. His voice when I answered was clipped and impatient, devoid of any genuine concern. Mom, where are you? You need to come pick up your things from the penthouse. I'm having the interior designers start work tomorrow, and I don't want your clutter in the way. No apology for his earlier cruelty, no regret, just a demand, a dismissive command. His tone sealed my decision. The part of Arthur's letter about Daniel's true character echoed in my mind. He had failed the test spectacularly. I'll be there, Daniel, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, a new resolve coursing through me. Tomorrow. After hanging up, I immediately called Charles Blackwood again. Mr. Blackwood, I said, I need a recommendation, an estate attorney, someone discreet, someone formidable. He gave me a name without hesitation, and I made another call, setting up a meeting for the following day. I spent my second night in the small, comfortable office adjoining the garage, not sleeping, but meticulously planning. I reviewed the asset inventory again, making notes, understanding the scope of what Arthur had entrusted to me. I charged the USB drives and began to explore their contents, encrypted files, digital records, a virtual library of Arthur's secret world. Each detail revealed more of his foresight, his intricate preparations. The weight of it all was immense, but so was the strength it gave me. You knew him better than I did, I whispered to Arthur's memory, my eyes fixed on the gleaming cars in the main bay. Our own son. This was no longer just about me. It was about honoring Arthur's legacy, about proving that true value lay not in superficial wealth, but in loyalty, love, and unwavering protection. And Daniel was about to learn that lesson, the hard way. If you're finding Arthur's story as captivating as I am, please do me a favor. Take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who appreciates a good mystery, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss what happens next. You won't believe how this unfolds. The penthouse felt foreign and unwelcoming as I stepped out of the elevator. The familiar scent of home, a blend of Arthur's pipe tobacco, and my jasmine potpourri, was gone, replaced by a sharp chemical odor of cleaning products. Yet I walked in with a newfound confidence, a quiet strength that emanated from the knowledge I now possessed. My simple black dress, a favorite of Arthur's, felt less like mourning attire and more like a uniform for battle. I was fortified, not by anger, but by a deep, unwavering resolve. Daniel barely looked up from his phone when I entered. He was engrossed in a conversation, gesturing vaguely towards a few hastily packed boxes near the door. Mom, finally, he said, his voice curt. Just get your personal stuff. The designers will be here at 9:30 on the dot, and I need the place cleared. He didn't even acknowledge my presence beyond that, his focus entirely on the impending renovations, already erasing the past. The apartment felt eerily emptier, colder. The warmth of a lived-in home had vanished. I noticed the absence of several large framed family photos that had adorned the walls for decades, images of Arthur and me, of Daniel as a child, of holidays and celebrations. They were simply gone. I'm actually planning to sell the penthouse after the renovations, Daniel announced casually, finally looking up as if I were a distant acquaintance. It's oversized for one person, and the market's hot. Right now, great investment opportunity. He spoke of our home, Arthur's home, as if it were nothing more than a commodity, a quick flip for profit. My heart ached, not for the building, but for the memories he was so readily discarding. He then gestured toward a pile of Arthur's belongings, casually dismissing them. And Dad's stuff, he waved a dismissive hand. It's mostly just old man stuff. I kept his Rolex and those fancy cufflinks, but the rest, not really my style. The words were like tiny cuts, each one a fresh insult to Arthur's memory, to the life we had built. Daniel saw no value, no sentiment, only clutter. I moved to the boxes Daniel had haphazardly packed for me. Inside, I found Arthur's favorite leather-bound books, his collection of antique fountain pens, a worn cashmere sweater he loved to wear on chilly evenings. Each item was a floodgate of memories, a whisper of his presence. I carefully sorted through them, each touch a moment of connection to the man who had loved me so profoundly. Daniel, however, grew increasingly impatient. He paced the polished floors, his expensive loafers clicking against the marble. "Can't you hurry this up, Mom?" he snapped, his voice tight with irritation. "It's just stuff. You don't even have a place to store it all, do you?" I looked up, meeting his impatient gaze with a calm that belied the storm brewing inside me. "I have a place, Daniel," I said, my voice steady and firm, a new resolve hardening my tone. "And I'll take as much time as I need. These aren't just possessions, Daniel, they're memories. Memories you seem all too eager to discard." His eyes widened slightly at my unexpected defiance, but he quickly recovered, scoffing dismissively. As I continued to pack the few treasured items I wanted to keep, I walked through each room of the penthouse, performing a silent farewell. I touched the cold marble of the kitchen counter where we'd shared so many morning coffees, the velvet of the armchair in the living room where Arthur would read, the cool glass of the balcony door overlooking the city we'd called home for decades. It was a goodbye, not just to a building, but to a chapter of my life, a profound shifting of foundations. In Arthur's walk-in closet, I discovered something unexpected. Tucked away in the very back, almost hidden, was his old leather messenger time, the one he carried to the office every day for years. Inside, among old notebooks and a half-eaten granola bar, was a sealed envelope. My name, Eleanor, was written in his familiar hand. "If you find this, Eleanor," the note inside read, "it's an extra copy of everything in the garage safe just in case. I always like to have a backup." A small, wry smile touched my lips. Arthur, always one step ahead, always anticipating every eventuality. He truly thought of everything. With my suitcase and Arthur's messenger bag, now heavy with its hidden treasures, I left the penthouse for the last time. I drove directly to the office of Brenda Hayes, the estate attorney Charles Blackwood had recommended. Her office was sleek, modern, and radiating an air of competence. As she reviewed the vast portfolio and the contents of Arthur's USB drives, her expression shifted from professional detachment to one of genuine astonishment. "Mrs. Vance," Brenda said, her voice filled with respect, "your husband's estate plan is truly extraordinary and impeccably executed. He was a brilliant man, not just in business, but in his foresight and dedication to your well-being." She outlined a strategy, a meticulous plan to secure every asset, to ensure Daniel would have no claim to what Arthur had so carefully set aside for me. Later that evening, as I was settling into a quiet hotel room, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Designers love the space. Going with a complete gut renovation. Dropped your old photo albums at Martha's place since you didn't take them." The casual cruelty, the dismissal of my cherished memories, confirmed everything Arthur had written. Daniel was lost to greed. I knew then that my journey wasn't just about reclaiming my life, but about honoring Arthur's profound love. I picked up my phone and booked a flight and a hotel room in Carmel. It was time to see the home Arthur had prepared for me, to embrace the new chapter he had so meticulously laid out. The coastal drive to Carmel was a balm to my weary soul. The rugged beauty of the Pacific coastline, the salty air whipping through the open window, the majestic cypress trees clinging to the cliffs. It was all a stark contrast to the sterile, unforgiving concrete jungle I'd left behind. Each winding curve of the road felt like another layer of old pain peeling away, replaced by a tentative sense of peace. This was Arthur's final gift. This journey, this anticipation of a new beginning. My GPS guided me down a quiet tree-lined street, leading me to a modest stone cottage, partially hidden by ancient cypress trees, their branches twisted and gnarled by the ocean winds. It was utterly charming, radiating a quiet strength, a gentle embrace. A small, handcrafted wooden sign near the front door simply read, "The Vance Cottage." I stepped out of the rental car, taking a deep breath of the cool, crisp air. The key Arthur had left in the portfolio fit perfectly. With a soft click, I opened the Dutch door and stepped inside. It wasn't just a house, it was a home meticulously designed, every detail chosen specifically with me in mind. The furniture was comfortable, upholstered in warm, earthy tones, soft greens, blues, and creams that mirrored the coastal landscape outside. Natural light flooded through generous windows, illuminating hand-woven rugs on polished hardwood floors and delicate botanical prints on the walls. It was my aesthetic, perfectly captured without me ever having to say a word. In a small, sun-drenched study, above a simple, elegant writing desk, hung a watercolor painting. My breath caught in my throat. It was a perfect replica of the Venice Canal, the exact spot where Arthur had proposed to me so many years ago. The bridge, the gondolas, the impossibly blue sky, it was all there, rendered with exquisite detail. Tears, no longer of sorrow or anger, but of gentle release, streamed down my face. Arthur had created this space for me with such profound care, such intimate understanding of my heart. He hadn't just thought of my financial security, he had thought of my emotional well-being, my comfort, my peace. Just as I was allowing myself to truly absorb the beauty and thoughtfulness of it all, there was a soft knock at the open Dutch door. A woman, her hair a charming silver halo, her face wreathed in kind wrinkles, stood smiling on the porch. She was probably in her early 70s, carrying a casserole dish that emitted a comforting scent of herbs and roasted chicken. "Hello, you must be Eleanor," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "I'm Beatrice Henderson, your next-door neighbor. Arthur asked me to keep an eye out for you." My heart swelled. Another piece of Arthur's intricate plan. I invited her in, tears still clinging to my eyelashes. Over a cup of tea, the precise blend I favored, as if Arthur had briefed her, Beatrice explained everything. "Arthur visited often over the past 6 years," she began, "preparing the cottage, choosing the furniture, even supervising the garden. He said it was his special project. He made me promise not to reach out until you actually came here yourself. He wanted it to be your discovery." Beatrice then revealed another astonishing detail. "He even brought photos of your city home," she said, gesturing vaguely, "to make sure we captured your aesthetic, the colors you loved, the way you arranged your books. He wanted it to feel like your home, not just a new house. He had truly thought of everything, anticipating every need, every subtle comfort. He told me," Beatrice continued, her voice softening, "that you might need a friend, someone who understood what it was to rebuild a life after loss. He spoke of you with such love, Eleanor. He was a remarkable man." Her words were a balm, a confirmation that Arthur's love transcended death, reaching out to me through this thoughtful neighbor. The next morning, after a night of truly restful sleep, the first in what felt like forever, I found a neatly labeled folder in the study desk drawer. It contained a comprehensive list of local doctors, recommended service providers for everything from gardening to plumbing, even a pre-applied library membership card with my name on it. And tucked inside, another note from Arthur, his handwriting a comforting presence. "My dearest Eleanor," it read, "I wish more than anything that I could be sharing this next chapter with you. To watch the sunsets from our little garden, to walk the beach with you, just as we always planned. The cottage is yours to use however you wish. It is paid for, fully maintained, and designed to offer you comfort and peace. My only hope is that it offers you a fresh start, a sanctuary where you can rediscover yourself, free from the burdens and expectations of the life we built, and the machinations of those who might seek to exploit it. A fresh start, a sanctuary, free from burdens. Arthur had given me not just a home, but a new life, a future imbued with his enduring love. And in this tranquility, a new resolve began to solidify. Daniel's betrayal, his callous disregard, now felt like a distant, irrelevant echo. My focus was now on protecting this legacy and honoring the man who had loved me so completely. After 3 days of quiet solace in Carmel, embracing the new rhythm of my life, the phone rang. It was Daniel, his voice laced with an impatience that sliced through the peaceful morning. "Mom, where are you? Aunt Martha called me, completely distraught. Said you haven't been staying with her, and she hasn't heard from you in days. Why didn't you tell anyone where you were?" His concern felt less about my well-being and more about a breach of his control. "I'm taking some time for myself, Daniel," I replied. My voice calm, the familiar anxiety he once provoked now strangely absent. "I found a place to stay." I didn't elaborate, letting the vagueness hang in the air, a silent challenge. His tone shifted, sliding seamlessly into the polished, calculating voice he used for business negotiations. "Look, Mom, that's all well and good, but I've been going through Dad's files, and I found references to additional investments that weren't covered in the will reading." My heart gave a small jolt, but I kept my breathing even. He was digging. "I suspect there are secret accounts, offshore holdings maybe. Dad was always so private, I thought you might know something about it." And there was an underlying demand in his voice, an expectation that I would immediately divulge any information. I remained vague, yet firm. "Arthur handled all the finances, Daniel. I knew very little about the specifics of his investments." It wasn't a lie, not entirely. The sheer breadth of Arthur's secret empire was still overwhelming me. "This isn't like you, Mom," Daniel pressed, his irritation growing, running off without a word. "People will talk. What will everyone think?" He was trying to shame me, to manipulate me with societal expectations, a tactic that had always worked on me in the past, but not anymore. "Let them talk, Daniel," I said, a quiet strength in my voice. "I'm beyond caring about appearances." The words surprised even me. The Daniel I had known for years would have recoiled at such defiance. He ended the call with a frustrated huff, leaving me with a new realization. Daniel's suspicions were solidifying. He was on the hunt, meticulously piecing together the fragmented clues Arthur had left in plain sight. How long, I wondered, before he discovered the full, unvarnished truth? My peaceful interlude was clearly at an end. A few days later, back in Carmel, my quiet morning routine was shattered. I returned from a walk on the beach to find a sleek, black luxury SUV, unmistakably Daniel's, parked conspicuously outside my modest stone cottage. My stomach churned, but I squared my shoulders. This confrontation was inevitable. He stood on my doorstep, arms crossed, his stance radiating a mixture of triumph and accusation. His eyes narrowed as they met mine. "Found you," he said, a sneer playing on his lips. "Interesting place you've got here, Mom. Rather cozy for someone who supposedly had nowhere to go. When were you planning to mention it?" I simply nodded, opening the Dutch door wider. "Come in, Daniel." My invitation caught him slightly off guard, but he stepped inside, his critical gaze sweeping over every detail of the cottage. The hand-woven rugs, the comfortable furniture, the watercolor of Venice. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, calculating potential value, assessing the level of comfort I was supposedly enjoying. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I had to hire a private investigator, Mom," he announced, his voice tight with feigned concern, "for a welfare check on an elderly parent who vanished after showing signs of confusion." People were starting to ask questions. He paused, letting the implication of my supposed mental fragility hang in the air. Then he dropped the bomb, his eyes locking onto mine, a predatory gleam in their depths. "Like that worthless garage in the industrial district," he continued, his voice low, heavy with suspicion. "Another one of Dad's surprises, wasn't it? The PI tracked down the deed, put two and two together. I visited it yesterday. The exterior's a mess, but I found a way in. And I saw enough to know there are cars in there, vintage cars, expensive cars, cars that are worth significantly more than that penthouse Dad left me." My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of apprehension and indignation. He had found it. Not the entire empire, not yet, but the first significant piece. The cars, the physical proof. I met his gaze, refusing to flinch. Your father made his choices, Daniel, I said, my voice steady, though my hands were clenched at my sides. And he was very clear about his intentions. Daniel scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound that shattered the quiet peace of my cottage. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, now blazed with a raw resentment. Choices, he spat, his voice laced with a bitter accusation. He chose to disinherit me, leaving me a pittance compared to this secret empire he built for you. What? Was I supposed to just accept my father, the great Arthur Vance, leaving me with a penthouse that's barely a fraction of your hidden wealth? He sounded genuinely aggrieved, as if he was the one who had been betrayed, the victim of a grand manipulation. What exactly do you want from me, Daniel? I asked, my voice steady, refusing to rise to his bait. I could see the anger, yes, but also a flicker of something else, something akin to hurt, deep beneath the surface. The truth would be a start, he retorted, pacing the small living room. Did you and Dad plan this manipulation? This elaborate charade to make me look like the fool? No, Daniel, I said, my voice firm. I had no prior knowledge of any of this. Arthur kept it all secret, even from me, until after his passing. I then met his gaze directly, allowing my own anger, long suppressed, to surface. Your behavior after the will reading, I continued, didn't exactly invite confidence or collaboration. You called me a useless old woman and then threw me out of my home, your mother, a mere hour after your father's will was read. He flinched, the accusation hitting its mark. For a moment, his bluster faltered. I was upset, he mumbled, looking away. Grief makes people do stupid things. It was the closest thing to an apology I would likely get. Perhaps, I conceded, reaching for the kettle. Would you like some tea, Daniel? We can try to have a civilized conversation. He looked surprised but nodded, a grudging acceptance. As I prepared the tea, I allowed myself to glimpse a fleeting vulnerability in him. This wasn't just about money for him. It was about his relationship with Arthur, his father's perceived judgment. Why does this matter so much to you, Daniel? I asked gently, handing him a warm mug. He took a long sip, then looked at me, his eyes clouded with a complex mix of emotions. It's about what it means, Mom, he finally confessed, his voice softer now. Dad trusted you with these assets, these secrets. He didn't trust me. He thought I was, what, incompetent? Greedy? The raw hurt in his voice was undeniable. It was time. I walked to the study and retrieved the original letter from Arthur, the one that outlined his reasons, his fears, his hopes. I handed it to Daniel. Your father left a letter explaining everything, I said, his intentions, his motivations. He took it, his brow furrowing as he read. As his eyes scanned Arthur's words, his expression shifted, morphing from hurt to indignation, and finally to cold anger. He crumpled the letter slightly in his hand. He manipulated me, Daniel seethed, slamming the letter onto the coffee table. Tested me like some lab rat. What kind of father does that? He pushed back from the sofa, rising to his feet. His voice gaining volume. I'll contest the will, Mom. I'll fight this. This is outrageous. I remained calm, sipping my tea. You can certainly try, Daniel, as I said, my voice even. But Arthur's estate plan is meticulous. He consulted with the best legal minds, ensuring its absolute solidity. Every asset, every transaction is fully documented and legally sound. You would be fighting against a fortress of foresight. His anger seemed to deflate slightly at my unwavering certainty. He paced again, then turned to me with a new tactic, a forced conciliatory tone. Then we need to find a compromise, he said, an equitable distribution. Half of what you have, and the penthouse from me. It's only fair. I met his gaze, my resolve ironclad. I'm not negotiating Arthur's final wishes, Daniel, I said, my voice firm. They represent his care, his foresight, his desire to ensure I would never be dependent on anyone's goodwill, including yours. This entire legacy is my protection, my independence, my freedom. Then I delivered Arthur's final, subtle checkmate. However, I continued, your father did leave me the discretion to share some of his other holdings, if and when I felt you demonstrated certain qualities. Integrity, compassion, a genuine commitment to family beyond personal gain. Your behavior, both before and after his passing, will heavily influence those decisions. The revelation stunned him into silence. He stood there, frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. The power had shifted, irrevocably. He had squandered his chance, but Arthur, in his boundless wisdom, had left a narrow path for redemption, entirely at my discretion. He glowered at me, then turned abruptly. This isn't over, Mom, he snarled, a hollow threat, before storming out of the cottage, the Dutch door swinging shut with a definitive thud. I sighed a long, weary exhalation. The confrontation had been draining, but necessary. Arthur's final gift was not just wealth, it was strength, autonomy, and the painful knowledge of my son's true nature. The burden of this power was immense, yet so was the certainty of Arthur's profound love. As I sat there lost in thought, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Beatrice. Lasagna tonight? You look like you could use some comfort. A small, gentle smile touched my lips. Arthur, in his wisdom, had provided for everything. 3 months had passed since Daniel's angry departure from Carmel. 3 months of quiet healing for me, and it turned out 3 months of rapidly escalating disaster for him. The first sign came in the form of a discreet visit from Jessica Stone, Daniel's former assistant. She appeared at my cottage door, looking pale and worried. Mrs. Vance, she began, her voice hushed. I felt you should know. Daniel is in serious financial trouble. The penthouse renovation cost doubled, then tripled, due to unexpected structural issues, and a major investment he spearheaded, it failed completely. Her words confirmed my fears. Arthur's warning, his test, had played out precisely as he'd predicted. I drove back to the city the next day, a somber pilgrimage to the penthouse that had once been my home. What greeted me was a scene of utter devastation. The elegant apartment was a gutted shell, exposed wiring snaking from cracked walls, abandoned construction equipment littering the floors, and a sickening stain of water damage spreading across what was left of the ceilings. It wasn't being renovated, it was rotting. Daniel, when he finally appeared, looked like a ghost of his former self. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes were shadowed with stress and exhaustion. He looked smaller, broken. I overextended, Mom, he confessed, his voice rough. I committed not just available capital, but borrowed heavily against other assets. I was so sure this investment would make me untouchable. His bravado was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability. Why didn't you reach out sooner? I asked, my voice softer than I intended. The sight of my broken son stirred a complex mix of emotions in me. He looked away, shame etched on his face. Pride, I suppose, or stubbornness. I didn't want to admit I was wrong. I didn't want to admit he was right. The unspoken he was Arthur, of course. I offered him help, but with a crucial caveat. I will help you, Daniel, he said, but not unconditionally, and not by simply writing a check to clear your debts. It's time for you to truly understand what Arthur was trying to teach you. I invited him back to Carmel, knowing that this conversation needed the calm and clear-headedness that only my sanctuary could provide. The next day, in the sun-drenched study of the cottage, I laid out Arthur's detailed financial projections. Among them were specific warnings about the penthouse's aging infrastructure, the likelihood of spiraling renovation costs, and even an analysis of the very investment Daniel had chosen, highlighting its inherent risks. Arthur was trying to prepare you, Daniel, I explained, gesturing to the meticulously compiled reports. He foresaw these issues. He tried to equip you with the knowledge to make wise decisions. Then I outlined my conditions. First, complete financial transparency. You will work with Brenda Hayes and a professional financial manager to restructure your affairs. Second, you will engage with a counselor to address not just the stress, but the underlying issues that led to your reckless decisions. And third, I paused, looking him directly in the eye. You make amends for how you treated me. Truly, sincerely, without expectation of reward. Daniel balked predictably at the thought of oversight, of having his finances managed like an allowance. He also vehemently resisted the idea of selling the penthouse. Everyone would know, Mom, he argued, his voice tinged with desperation. My reputation, my standing in the business world. Daniel, I interrupted softly, people already know. They know you gutted your father's legacy, overextended yourself, and are now facing ruin. You've really destroyed everything, haven't you? The raw truth hung in the air, undeniable. I saw his shoulders slump, the last vestiges of his pride crumbling. For the first time, he seemed truly vulnerable, truly broken. I then offered a path forward. I will establish a trust, I said, us on, to stop the foreclosure on the penthouse. This trust will either complete the renovations responsibly, turning it into a profitable asset, or sell it at market value. In return, the conditions stand: full financial oversight, mandatory counseling, and genuine amends for your actions. He looked at me, a flicker of hope amidst the despair. He thought for a long moment, the weight of his choices and his father's love settling heavily upon him. I'll do it, he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. All of it, whatever it takes. Months later, Daniel visited Carmel again. The change in him was palpable. He was thinner, perhaps, but his eyes were clearer, his shoulders less hunched with the burden of arrogance. He looked truly peaceful for the first time in years. The penthouse closing is next week, he announced, a genuine smile replacing his usual sneer. The trust managed to sell it at a good profit after making essential repairs, not the lavish renovations I'd planned. He also shared news of a new venture. I've been offered a position in community development, working on affordable housing projects. It feels like meaningful work, Mom, like I'm actually contributing. He then reached into his pocket. I wanted to return these, he said, handing me Arthur's cufflinks. And I found something else in Dad's old desk. He produced a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on a silken cushion, was my original wedding band, shining brightly. And beside it, a breathtaking eternity band, custom-made with diamonds. Dad had ordered this for your 45th anniversary, Daniel explained, his voice thick with emotion. He wanted to surprise you. Tears welled in my eyes as I carefully slipped the new eternity ring onto my finger, alongside my wedding band. It was a tangible symbol of Arthur's enduring love, his foresight, his constant devotion. Thank you, Daniel, I whispered. This means more than I can express. As for the cars, I told him, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I'm keeping the Aston Martin. It's a reminder of Arthur's adventurous spirit and my own newfound freedom. But the others, I'm selling them. A portion will go to establishing a foundation in Arthur's name for community development. Your new passion. And the rest, Daniel, will be placed in a trust for your future children. A true inheritance not just of wealth, but of responsibility and genuine care. The next morning, I took the gleaming silver Aston Martin DB5 for a drive along the breathtaking coastal highway, the wind in my hair, the engine a low, powerful purr. The sun glittered on the Pacific, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt utterly, completely free. Empowered, I honored Arthur's wisdom and his profound love, knowing that in navigating the complexities he had left, I had not only protected his legacy, but found my own true worth. It all began on my 68th birthday, when I found myself, suitcase in hand, staring into the dark, abandoned garage my late husband Arthur had left me. You're just a useless old woman, Mom. What would you even do with a real inheritance? Daniel's cruel words still echoed, twisting the knife of betrayal. I, Eleanor Vance, had been cast aside, dismissed as worthless. But as I fumbled with that rusted key, as the ancient door groaned open to reveal something far more extraordinary than junk, I realized Arthur had had a different plan entirely. This wasn't just a garage, it was a sanctuary, a secret vault containing not only millions in classic cars, but the blueprints to a vast, hidden empire. An empire he'd built specifically to protect me from the very greed Daniel eventually succumbed to. Arthur's profound love, his incredible foresight, became my shield and my sword. It allowed me not only to rebuild my life in the serene Carmel cottage he'd prepared, but also to guide my broken son towards genuine redemption, on my terms. Daniel learned the hard way that true worth isn't in material possessions, but in integrity and family. I learned that true strength isn't in what you inherit, but in the resilience you find when you're underestimated. Arthur's wisdom secured my future and healed my past, proving that even after death, love can pave the way for a new, empowered beginning.